Would you rather have a coach who screams at you and calls you dehumanizing names when you mess up, or one who helps you learn from your mistakes with patience and with encouragement? The answer is obvious. So why would you accept anything less from the voice in your head? Welcome to the Kindness Extremist Podcast. I'm your host, Shola Richards, aka Brother Teresa. I've spoken to tens of thousands of people all over the world about the importance of kindness. And I am obsessed with how we can bring more kindness into our daily lives and restore balance to a deeply unbalanced world. Every episode, I'll give you 3 practical strategies to create a kinder world, and I'll do it in 30 minutes or less. No fluff, just valuable, actionable content that you can implement in your life immediately after listening to help you actively create a kinder world. There's no time to waste. Let's dive in. What's up, my friend? Welcome back to episode 28 of the Kindness Extremist Podcast. I'm your host, Shola Richards, aka Brother Teresa, and I'm fired up to dive into this topic with you today. But before we jump in, I want you to think about something for a moment. What is the longest relationship you've ever had in your life? Is it with your spouse, your best friend, your parents? Actually, the answer is none of the above. The longest relationship you will ever have with anyone is the one that you have with yourself. Specifically, the relationship that you have with a voice inside of your head that provides running commentary on everything that you do. Here's the wild part about this. For most of us, that voice is absolutely terrible company. I'm talking about that internal critic that shows up uninvited to tell you that you're not smart enough, not successful enough, not attractive enough, or just not enough, period. That voice, that one that replays your mistakes on endless loop and somehow manages to turn even your victories into evidence why you don't deserve them. Today, we're talking about overcoming that, specifically overcoming your negative self-talk. And I need you to understand something right off the bat. This isn't just about feeling better about yourself, though that's obviously important. This is about kindness, real kindness. Here's why. You cannot give what you don't have. If you're constantly treating yourself with harshness and criticism, that energy inevitably spills over into how you treat others. When we're at war with ourselves, we end up creating casualties in our relationship, in our work, and in our communities. But when we learn to speak to ourselves with the same compassion that we'd offer a good friend, something beautiful happens. We become kinder, more patient, and more understanding with everyone around us. We stop projecting our internal battles onto the world. And in today's episode, I'm going to share 3 powerful strategies that can transform the relationship with that voice in your head. And as always, each section will always provide a practical takeaway that you can start using immediately. Because knowing about these strategies and actually using them in your daily life are 2 completely different things. I hope you're ready, my friend. We're about to do some work that could change not just how you talk to yourself, but how you show up in every relationship in your life. Let's do this. Let me tell you about a conversation that I had with my youngest daughter last week. After a recent soccer game, a game where she scored a goal and assisted on another, she was in a miserable mood because she played terribly. Instead of finding positives in her game performance, she spent the entire time after the game saying things like, "I'm terrible at soccer," and "everyone on the team must think that I suck." Now, if her best friend on the team had a bad game, would my lovely daughter have called her a terrible soccer player? Of course not. She would have been encouraging and supportive. But somehow, when it came to herself, all that kindness went out the window. Does this sound familiar? This is what negative self-talk looks like, and the first step to overcoming it is learning to notice it when it happens. Most of us are so used to that critical voice that we don't even recognize it as a choice. We accept this as our normal reality. But here's the thing. Negative self-talk is like a smoke alarm. When a smoke alarm goes off, you don't just stand there debating whether the beeping is accurate. You investigate. You figure out if there's actually a fire or if your kid just burned the toast again. The same principle applies to that critical voice in your head. When it starts going off, your job isn't to immediately believe it or to fight with it. Your job is to notice it and name it. This is what psychologists call metacognition, thinking about your thinking. If you haven't already, check out episode 26 of this podcast for a deep dive on critical thinking. Metacognition is one of the most powerful tools that we have for creating distance between ourselves and our thoughts. When you catch yourself in the middle of a negative thought spiral, try saying something like this. "I'm having that thought again that I'm not good enough." Or, "I notice I'm being really critical of myself right now." Or, "There's that harsh voice again." Seriously, fam, please try this. The simple act of naming what's happening creates what researchers call cognitive diffusion. You stop being your thoughts and start observing them instead. Early in my professional life, I was notorious for beating myself up over every small mistake. I'd make an error in an email that I sent to a client. Instead of correcting it and moving on, I'd spend the next 2 hours spiraling about how I was incompetent and probably going to get fired to any poor soul who was stuck listening to me. When I first heard about the notice and name it technique, I'm going to keep it real. I initially thought it was the dumbest idea ever. Still though, what I was doing clearly wasn't working, so I was willing to give it a try. The next time I caught myself in a shame spiral, I paused and said out loud, I'm having really harsh thoughts about myself right now. That simple statement changed everything for me. Instead of being consumed by the thoughts, I realized that I could step back and evaluate whether they're helpful or accurate. Better yet, I realized that calling myself incompetent over a typo was not only inaccurate, but it was also cruel. The magic of noticing and naming it isn't that it makes negative thoughts disappear, is that it gives you a choice in how you choose to respond to them. So your first kindness strategy of the episode is this. For the next week, become a detective of your own self-talk. Every time you catch yourself being self-critical, pause and name what is happening. You can say it out loud or write it down, whatever works for you. Write this, like for example, I'm having negative thoughts about myself right now. Or I notice I'm being really harsh on myself right now. Don't try to change the thoughts just yet. Don't worry about that yet. Just practice noticing them. You will be amazed at how often that critical voice shows up. And more importantly, you'll start to see those thoughts are events in your mind, not facts about who you are. Remember, awareness is always the first step toward change. You can't transform what you don't first acknowledge. Okay, so you start noticing and naming your negative self-talk. That's huge, but now we need to take it a step further and start questioning whether those harsh thoughts are actually true. Here's something that might surprise you. Most of our negative self-talk is not based on evidence. It's based on emotion. When we're feeling frustrated, disappointed, or embarrassed, our brains don't seek out facts. They seek out confirmation of what we're already feeling. So if you're feeling like a failure, your brain will gladly provide you with a highlight reel or low light reel, I don't know, of every mistake you've ever made while conveniently forgetting all of your successes. If you're feeling unattractive, your mind will zoom in on every physical flaw that you have while ignoring all the times that people have complimented you. This is where questioning the evidence becomes crucial. I want you to think of yourself as both the prosecutor and the defense attorney in the courtroom of your mind. The prosecutor, that's your negative self-talk, has already presented his case. Put it away for a minute. Now it's time for the defense to cross-examine the evidence. Years ago, I met a woman who approached me after a speaking event who was convinced that she was terrible at public speaking. After chatting with her for a while, she shared that she had given one presentation earlier in her career that didn't go well. And from that point forward, she carried around this belief like it was carved in stone. When I asked her to question the evidence, she realized that her entire self-assessment was based on one experience from 5 years ago. Since then, she successfully led team meetings, given client presentations, and even delivered a toast at her sister's wedding that had people laughing and crying. But her brain had conveniently filed all that under the "that doesn't count" category, while keeping that one bad presentation as the definitive proof of her abilities, or lack thereof. When you catch yourself in a negative self-talk spiral, here are 4 evidence-questioning techniques that you can use immediately. First is the fact check. Ask yourself, what evidence do I have that this thought is true? Also ask yourself, what evidence do I have that it's not true? Write down both lists. You might be surprised at how thin the evidence is for your harshest self-criticisms. Second is the time travel test. Ask yourself, will this even matter in 5 years? How about 5 months or even 5 days? This helps you to gain perspective on whether you're catastrophizing something that's actually pretty minor. Third is the friend perspective. Ask yourself, what would I tell a friend who is having the exact same thought about themselves? Often we can see clearly for others what we can't see for ourselves. More on this coming up in part 3 of this episode. And fourth is the specificity challenge. Instead of accepting vague, sweeping statements like, I'm terrible at everything, get specific. I made a mistake in this particular situation. Specificity removes the emotional charge and helps you to deal with facts instead of your feelings. So the second kind of strategy of the episode is this. This week, whenever you catch yourself having a negative thought about yourself, become a detective. Ask yourself these 3 questions. 1, what specific evidence do I have that this thought is true? 2, what evidence do I have that contradicts this thought? And 3, am I basing this on facts or on feelings? Write down your answers. You'll likely discover that many of your harshest self-criticism crumble under even the most basic scrutiny. You're not trying to convince yourself that you're perfect. Let's be clear here. You're just trying to be fair and accurate in your self-assessment. Remember, the goal isn't to replace negative thoughts with delusionally positive ones. The goal is to replace inaccurate, harsh thoughts with balanced, evidence-based ones. Hey, fellow kindness extremists, it's me, Shola. If you're picking up what I'm putting down, if you're mowing what I'm growing, if you're smelling what I'm stepping in. Okay, I'll stop. If you're enjoying what you're listening to so far, I would love it if you would take a moment to hit the subscribe button and leave a rating and a review. Those incredibly kind acts go so far in helping me to reach as many people as possible who will join the movement to actively create a kinder world. I appreciate you so much, my friend. Okay, let's get back to the episode. Now we come to what might be the most powerful strategy of all, learning to talk to yourself the way you would talk to the person you love the most. I want you to think about someone who you care deeply about, your best friend, your child, your partner, your parent, whoever comes to mind. Now, imagine they came to you feeling terrible about themselves, using the exact same words you use when you talk to yourself. How do you respond? Would you pile on with more criticism? Would you agree that they're terrible and worthless? Of course not. Or, at least I hope not. You'd probably be gentle, understanding, and encouraging. You remind them of their strengths, put their mistakes in perspective, and help them to see the bigger picture. So why is it that we can offer this kindness so freely to others, but when it comes to ourselves, we become our own worst enemy? This double standard is not only unfair and unkind, it's counterproductive. Research shows that self-compassion actually leads to better performance, stronger motivation, and greater resilience than self-criticism. When we treat ourselves with kindness, we're more likely to learn from our mistakes, bounce back from setbacks, and take healthy risks. The Love One test works so incredibly well because it helps us to access the kindness that's already inside of us. Most people know how to be compassionate. We do it for others all the time. The challenge is learning to direct that same compassion inward. Here's how to apply the Love One test. It's super simple. Step 1. When you catch yourself being self-critical, pause and ask yourself, what would I say to my loved one if they were going through this exact same situation? Step 2. Actually say those kind words to yourself, either out loud or in your head. Use the same tone of voice that you use with someone you care about. Step 3. If it helps, imagine that you're talking to a younger version of yourself. Sometimes we can find compassion for our younger selves more easily than we can find compassion for who we are today. A while ago, I had a conversation with a woman who was devastated after being passed over for a promotion. She was calling herself a loser and convinced that she never amounts to anything. When I asked her would she tell her best friend in the same situation, her whole demeanor changed. She said, yeah, I tell her that one setback didn't define her worth. I remind her of all the amazing things that she's accomplished and help her to see this as a learning opportunity. I tell her that the right opportunity will come along and that this experience will make her stronger. So then I asked her, so why aren't you saying those things to yourself? It was a powerful moment for her. She realized that she was withholding from herself the very kindness that came so naturally when she was supporting others. The Love One test isn't about lying to yourself or ignoring real problems, to be clear. It's about treating yourself with the same respect, the same understanding, and the same encouragement that you offer to people who you care about. When your loved one makes a mistake, you don't love them less. When they have a bad day, you don't write them off as worthless. When they're struggling, you don't kick them to the curb or kick them while they're down. You offer support, perspective, and hope. You deserve the same kindness from yourself. So your third kindness strategy of the episode is this. For the next week, every time you catch yourself being self-critical, immediately ask, what would I tell the person who I love the most in this world if they were in the exact same situation? And then actually say those words to yourself with the same warmth and the same care you'd offer to the person you love the most. If it helps, write a letter from the perspective of your loved one. What would they want you to know about your worth, your capabilities, and your potential? Keep that letter somewhere where you can access it when you really need a reminder of how to treat yourself with kindness. Remember, this isn't about lowering your standards or accepting mediocrity. It's about creating the kind of internal environment where growth, learning, and positive change can actually happen. Harshness and criticism shut down our ability to improve. Kindness and understanding, thankfully, help to open it up. We've covered a tremendous amount of ground today, and I want to make sure that you leave with a clear action plan for transforming your relationship with yourself. First, let's recap our 3 strategies for overcoming negative self-talk. The first strategy is to notice and name it, or in other words, catch yourself in the act. When you hear that critical inner voice, pause and acknowledge it. Say to yourself, I'm having negative thoughts about myself right now. This creates distance between you and your thoughts, and it gives you the power to choose how to respond. The second strategy is to question the evidence. Ask yourself, is this actually true? What evidence do I have for and against this thought? Often our harshest self-criticisms don't hold up under scrutiny. Be your own defense attorney and demand proof before accepting harsh judgments about yourself. The third strategy is to practice the loved one test. When negative thoughts arise, ask yourself, what would you tell your loved one if they were in the same situation? Then offer yourself that same understanding and encouragement. You deserve the kindness that you give so freely to others. As we close, I want to address something important. Some of you might be thinking, but Shola, man, look, if I'm not hard on myself, I'll become lazy and I'll stop trying to improve. Okay, that fear is understandable, but it's based on a false premise. Self-criticism doesn't actually motivate positive change. It paralyzes it. Think about this. When we're constantly beating ourselves up, we become so focused on avoiding failure that we stop taking the risks that are necessary for growth. Self-compassion, on the other hand, creates psychological safety. When you know you'll treat yourself with kindness regardless of the outcome, you're more likely to try new things, learn from mistakes, and persist through challenges. Think about it this way. Would you rather have a coach who screams at you and calls you dehumanizing names when you mess up, or one who helps you learn from your mistakes with patience and with encouragement? The answer is obvious. So why would you accept anything less from the voice in your head? Here's your homework for this week. Practice all three strategies we discussed. Notice and name your negative self-talk. Question the evidence behind harsh thoughts. Apply the loved one test when you need encouragement. Pay attention to how this shifts your internal dialogue and affects not just how you feel about yourself, but how you interact with others. I predict you'll discover something beautiful. As you become kinder to yourself, you'll naturally become kinder to everyone around you. Self-compassion isn't selfish. It's the foundation for treating others with the kindness and understanding that they deserve. If nothing else, remember this. The relationship you have with yourself sets the tone for every relationship you ever have. My challenge to you is to make the relationship with yourself the most important and cherished relationship in your life. This is your host, Shola Richards, aka Brother Teresa, and you now know that kindness can't be weak because you just experienced the strength of the Kindness Extremist Podcast. Until next time, my friend, the journey to a kinder world continues. Thank you for listening to the Kindness Extremist Podcast. I really hope that you enjoyed this episode, and I have one favor to ask. If you could kindly hit the subscribe button, leave a rating and a review, not only would that be incredibly kind, but by doing so, you're actively playing a role in growing this movement and ideally getting us one step closer to creating a kinder world. Hope to see you next week for another episode of the Kindness Extremist Podcast. Bye for now.